Cashflow Diary Podcast, episode 572.
Welcome to yet another exciting episode of the CashFlow Diary Podcast, the podcast that teaches you insider tips, tactics, and strategies for creating leverage streams of cash flow into your life. Learn from top-performing entrepreneurs, business owners, investors, and thought leaders from across the globe as they share their secrets to success. Like what you learn on this and other CashFlow Diary podcast episodes? Go to learninvestingnow.com and sign up to receive powerful tips and information that will help you succeed as an entrepreneur and investor. Now, here's your host, investor, entrepreneur, business owner, educator, speaker, author, and master facilitator of Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow game, Jay Massey.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Cashflow Diary Podcast. I'm your host, Jay Massey, and I'm glad that you are here today because we are going to talk about something that, well, it's not really so much of a secret anymore. I mean, there was a time a few years back when people were like, what's that? And who is this? And what do you mean? And now it's more like, yeah, I heard of that, and I'd love to know how to do that, and tell me more. What am I talking about? I am talking about the wonderful way of getting into real estate today that I call short-term rentals, because at the end of the day, it's something we have been practicing. As many of you know, we shifted our entire focus over to the short-term rental game a few years ago, and we've seen a lot of success, not only for ourselves, but most importantly, for individuals who are looking to get started and make that happen for themselves as well. And it's been an exciting journey, and that journey continues. And as the marketplace matures, like any other marketplace would, specialists emerge, meaning there's one thing to say, you know, like I'm a car repair person, but I specialize in, you know, European cars, or maybe you specialize in foreign car or domestic cars. You specialize in certain types of things. And the same is true here when it comes to the short-term rental world. I have with me today someone that many call the father of the extended stay, because I get excited when I run into individuals who are out there doing the same thing, but yet have chosen a slightly different take on it, or chosen to specialize on a particular way of running their business, which, I think will benefit us all. So if you are out there in a marketplace that requires or benefits from 30-day plus stays, you're definitely going to enjoy hearing from none other than Al Williamson. He is/was a professional engineer, because today he spends his time as a full-time real estate investor. So when you see him and you ask him, hey, what do you do? If you've ever played the Cashflow 101 board game, that's what he does all day. He looks at market cards, opportunities, and he makes cash flow happen. That's what I get excited about, because that's literally the life that we get to live and love. Now, here's what that means. That means if you have been thinking about getting involved in short-term rentals, if you have been going, man, I'd love to get in real estate one day, but and you have said, if I only just knew how, or, man, my ordinances, they won't let me, this particular episode is 100% for you. So make sure you take out that iPad, notepad, scratch pad, whatever it is that you're writing on. Let's get ready to listen, love, and learn from Al Williamson. Al, how you doing?
Good, man. That intro made me excited. I'm like ready to go myself. Who are you gonna bring on, man? This is great.
He's like, yes, I'm signing all up, starting over. It's great.
Yeah, who's this guy? This is great.
I love it. I love it. I love it. So, before we get too far, this being the first time that you're here, I am obligated to ask you the same question that I ask everybody else the first time that they're here. Are you ready? All right. I tend to look at today's entrepreneurs a lot like yesterday's superheroes, Batman, Robin, Hulk, Black Widow, etc. You get the idea, because I think entrepreneurs and superheroes have a ton of things in common. Like, as an entrepreneur, I can envision myself running around town and, saving customers one sale at a time. But also, like a superhero, well, an entrepreneur has a beginning, if you will. Think about Spider-Man. There was a time where he was just a kid going to school, doing his thing. Then one day he gets bit by a spider, discovers, hey, I've got something special. I have a superhuman ability, And now the task is, do I use it for good or for evil? So my question to you is as follows. Before being a civil engineer, before working on large projects, you know, the Alcatraz, the Bay Bridges, and all that good stuff, before anything that people know you for today, before being the extended stay person that you are today, before all of that, what we want to know is, who is Al Williamson?
Oh my goodness! Before that, he was a guy who was trying to make the Olympic team because he was as a gymnast. Because I was trying to be a superhero. I was at full-time training for a superhero.
That's cool. My wife was actually was doing the same thing for volleyball, and interestingly, on her way to said tryouts, she actually got into an accident which totally changed her life in that regard. So gymnastics was your thing.
Yep, and similar, and that was my total focus. And that helped me as I was getting through school. But same, high school, senior year, pulled some tendons in my arms off a high bar. And I had to think, man, that could have happened just before the games. This is high stakes if I bet all my cards on the Olympic Games, you know. That and it wasn't, I was good, Jay, but honestly, I wasn't the best in the world at it. And I had to sober up and say, am I going to be a gym coach or am I going to be an inventor? You know, I always wanted to be an inventor, like the next George Washington Carver. That was my destiny. So I started. I had to follow that. So I gotta do engineering so I can build stuff, right?
That makes sense.
That's how I rolled down that way.
That makes sense. I bet you drove your mom nuts trying to build all kinds of things out of everything.
Oh yeah, it was. You know, my father, he was from the country, Mississippi, and he would duct tape and wire things up and use a little bit of rubbing alcohol and fix stuff. He put it together. He got it up and going. He was able to get things back and going. So I had that in me too. So.
Well, you know, duct tape fixes everything. It just does. Duct tape and Windex. Put those two things together, you're good. You're good 100%. So take us on this journey, if you will. How do we go from inventor to engineer to real estate investor to short-term rentals? There's a journey here that we would love to understand.
Oh, absolutely. So it was all doing all the things that people tell you to do. Go to school. I did that. Got engineering degree, and then you know, a startup company, and I just didn't like going to work every day. It was all right, but it just wasn't. I wasn't able to use my creativity the way I wanted to. So I went back to graduate school, and then I got my in Illinois. It was so cold there. That's all I can think about those 2 years. It was just so cold. But I got you know, I came back to Sacramento, and you know, I was a single black guy. I was 25 with 2 degrees. I felt like I was being hunted by these women. You know, it's like all the people from high school that were married and divorced. I was hunted, but I was able to find my wife, and that's what caused it. The real estate thing is, I was getting ready to get married, and a guy at a church picnic said, "You got to think about duplexes," because he had a portfolio of duplexes. He says, "You should do that. Start off there, and before you buy a house, you know, that's a great way of starting." So I went to the library and just read everything from one side about real estate, and it was just, you know how it is, Jay. He's like, "Oh man, this is clicking. This makes sense. This is like algebra. This feels good. You know, I can forced appreciation. I love the sound of that. You know, highest best use. This is perfect for my creativity. You know, it aligns with who I am and how I like to start at a different place and blaze my own trail versus following someone else's path. That was kind of my thing. So I did it. I pushed my new bride into a threeplex, into one of the smallest units of a threeplex that we bought. And she was like, "Oh, okay." and then she got embarrassed that she didn't want her friends to know she was living in an apartment, even though we owned the whole thing.
Right.
she didn't want them to know she was in an apartment until it quadrupled on us in value.
Yep.
Quadruple. Nothing that we did. I enjoyed fixing it up and doing nice. It was a Victorian, so I was doing craftsmanship stuff.
Got it.
So I was loving that. You may be familiar with it. It's on P Street in 23rd in Sacramento, Midtown Sacramento.
I bet you. I can only. What I'm imagining in my head right now is something that I know my wife would love. She tends to. I'm more of a modern European, straight lines, clean type of thing. But I for some reason, I'm imagining a clawfoot tub in your bathroom. But that's really what's going on. Yeah.
You nailed it. Exactly it. All that stuff people pay extra for. Because of the uniqueness spin of it. So I was bringing that those details out. Every time you switch a color and add more colors to a rosette or something like that, people notice it, and you can raise your rents a little bit. So that worked out for me. And once it quadrupled, my wife was all on board then.
Oh, of course.
I knew it. I knew it all along. It was, I was with you, supporting you, Al.
Well,
I was with you.
Yes.
So that worked out. But it was one reason it took that big swing up is because it was in a area that was going through a neighborhood redevelopment.
Mm-hmm.
We had all that stuff. So we decided to do it again, but in the Oak Park area. Oak Park was was an area in Sacramento that was going through an effort to get itself together, and the city had some money set aside and was doing some stimulus stuff in the commercial area. So we bought an 8-plex over there and started again. We were going to work with the neighbors and work with the local politicians, and there was also a nonprofit there that was doing a lot of stuff called St. Hope, and all that. Let's start in a great spot, buy the biggest thing on the block, which was this 8-unit place, and really dive in and with the neighborhood and see if we can help speed up the neighborhood improvement. So that was our thing. It was exercising kind of leadership. I call this a leadership lid. You take someone to call in that the street light is burned out, or no one will know or care. You just have to advocate for that neighborhood and keep the litter off the ground, things like that. And that started to knit the neighborhood back together. Slowly, it turned in from that into block parties. I started doing block parties once a year and putting the bounce house in front of the drug dealer's house. So,
right.
So everyone, the police and everyone would know. And that started cleaning up our block, and that kind of rippled a little bit. And other things were going on too. But at the same time, I found that it was a lot easier to do work in the inner city when you attract really honorable people. And you don't have to raise your rents. It's just when the commotion goes down, it's a lot more enjoyable and a lot more profitable, and not so taxing on me emotionally. So that kept going. I happened to be in an area that was wonderful for the location, with the freeways and the medical center just up the street, and the commercial district just down the street. And eventually the neighborhood became safe enough that I could build a relationship with the medical center. I was always working on it, but they decided to rent a room from me, a unit from me, one of my apartments, for their scholarship program. And they needed a place for 6 months out of the year. Every year they wanted a place, and most landlords would say, no, 1-year lease. What are we gonna do for the other 6 months, right?
Right.
So that's where I said, oh yeah, absolutely. I was already dabbling with Airbnb back in 2011, 2012, when I was in San Francisco, working on Alcatraz Island. I was funded by the National Park Service for housing. So I was hopping all around San Francisco using this new thing called Airbnb.
Got it.
And at that time back then, it was really bed and breakfasty.
Right.
As far as a lot of carry people's luggage, be a host type of thing. So I figured I had the medical center for the first 6 months, and then I would do short-term rentals the second half of the year. So that's how it really started, and I kept experimenting from there. The neighborhood was safe enough to support the activities, and it kept getting better.
Got it.
And that's really how it got going. That's the origin story right there.
So there's a lot inside of there that I want to make sure that people don't miss and hit, and then I've got some questions, because one of the things I want everyone to really, really understand, similar to what Alice just said, and what I have come to believe now, having had the privilege of educating and training people for a while and been in the real estate game for over a decade, is simply the fact that one of the easiest ways to now get into the real estate game and pretty much put yourself in a profitable position really quickly is by leveraging short-term rentals in some capacity, which when we say short-term, I just mean anything that results in a tenant being less than that traditional 1 year lease situation. And that's a lot of what I'm hearing. Now, Al, you're up in the area of, well, first of all, California. And then second, you are in some of the most expensive places in California known to man. So the idea of someone who is saying, I can cash flow real estate, it's rare that they're A, from California, B, let alone from the areas that you're talking about. So help us understand, was there ever an issue trying to work with traditional tenants and make the buildings work? Because if you're running a purchase model up there, that's a hefty dollar that you're trying to make work, especially with mortgages and maintenance and whatnot.
Well, I am in Sacramento, but it's still exactly what you're saying is exactly, because maintenance costs.
Yeah.
You pencil something on paper and it doesn't pan out. That's why I started collecting ideas about how to increase my net income. I wrote a book called 40 Ways to Increase the Net Income of Your Rental Property, because I was on this quest on figuring out how to make it work, because it wasn't working for me until you got depreciation and everything. I wasn't getting the numbers because something was always breaking.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't want to. I wanted my property to be a physical representation of me.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't do what other people were doing and just letting it go.
Right.
So
well, no, that you're bringing up the point that I've made many times is, and because people ask me like Jay, why on earth do you talk the way you do about? Because we had at our highest we had about 450 doors, and I'm like, people, you don't understand. It's a great way to build wealth, horrible way to build income, because something's always broken and it's got to be fixed. So that's right. It's not like you get to cake the money home. You're putting it right back in the building, and until that debt service is gone, you've got to figure out something else to do. That's right. And that's exactly why short-term rentals was like the saving me. Right.
My wife was saying, why can't we go on vacation? We got all these rentals. Like, no, honey.
Because we got all these rentals. That's why.
Yeah. That was a hard conversation.
Yeah, no doubt.
And that's what really started the quest for finding these other side income or ancillary income streams. And one of them, I remember pulling over on the side of the road after I wrote the book. I was pulled over, and Jay, when you start getting like clarity, you like, okay, I got to sit here and marinate in this for a little bit. I'm sure you had that.
Mm-hmm.
So I pulled over. I was on my way to work, and I pulled over, and I was like, oh man, a lot of these income streams, these ancillary income streams, are related to getting away from doing 1-year leases. It's getting away. Is doing short-term and extended term and mid-term rentals. So I remember just soaking on that and like, okay, similar just to what you said, Jay, I'm flipping everything over to, I still do some regular rentals, but I'm like, I'm gonna dive deep into these short-term rental things because there's so many upsells and different ways to magnify my cash flow.
Yep.
So that's really what all started it off. And then back in 2015, Airbnb came out with that business travel ready category.
Yeah.
Where you can't share. It said that you can't share the unit with your guests, and you can't have pets back then. For that unit, it had to be a dedicated unit. So that said, landlords, pay attention. That was my bell. So I set one of my units in this aside, and just to do the experiment to see exactly how good it was, because I was writing my blog and I called myself a landlord scientist. So I can, and being an inventor, this is what I was going to do. I was going to test it all out.
Got it.
So that's how I found that I could do 3 stays per month and make a really big gross, a much bigger net than a traditional landlord too. But then I did a 1-month stay, and I asked for a little bit less of rent, but my net income was nearly the same. When you pay yourself and all the turnover and all the insurance and taxes and all that stuff is taken out, my 1-month stay was about the same net income as my 3 stays per month. And then I said, well, let me follow that. Let me get a 3-month stay. And my 3-month stay, I could spread my expenses, especially my time. And when you think about your cleaner, or you don't have to pay taxes or no additional insurance, because it's just month-to-month rentals at that point. The efficiencies made it so that the net income on the 3-month stay was better than the net income on three times per month.
Yeah.
So I just, only for me to discover that hotels were discovering the same thing. They were discovering that they rather have one guy stay for 30 days than 30 guys all at one day.
No doubt. Now, go ahead.
No, that was it. I'm like, we're all kind of converging on this extended stay model. 1/4 of the new in the pipeline for hotels industry is going to be extended stay products, and the whole market for people staying longer was increasing. And then you got mobile computing and cloud computing, and it's like, man, this whole thing of people wanting to live in one place and work in another is just taken off.
Yeah.
So that's why I dove in it, and I'm just like, I gotta learn everything I can about this and move my portfolio over this direction.
And clearly, that I agree for all the same reasons, many more. And the question, though, is I know that's on many people's minds, is because there's a number of them where they ask questions like, well, I don't understand how that works, because how do you find that tenant? How do you market for that person? What is it that you're doing differently? Are you still even using Airbnb? I mean, what is the differences, or what are the differences that you're doing in your marketing to be able to attract the person that you're referring to? Because I know for a fact, because we get the question all the time over here, is, hey Jay, I live in Denver, or I'm I'm here. They're in various parts of the country to where stays shorter than 28 or 30 days are not allowed, and they're wondering, can this model still work? Now, I often tell them, yeah, it can still work. You have to market differently. But being that we're more of a generalist than a specialist in the extended stay, we're really curious to hear what's different from your point of view that would unlock this potential for many of the entrepreneurs that are listening.
Well, you're so spot on. One thing I start people, I have about, I kind of categorize into like 14 different marketing strategies. But I start with people, the to know if your market can support it. And I say, is there an extended stay hotel in your town? And they're like, yeah, there's Residence Inn, and there's Extended Stay America, and there's a whole bunch of hotels with kitchenettes and things in them.
Mm-hmm.
And then we walk through it, and like, well, they understand the market better than you, and you'll never be able to do as much market research as they've done.
I agree.
So it's just like Burger King sets up on the other side of the street of Starbucks. I mean, McDonald's. That's your marketing research. There you go. So because of that, you just are trying to poach one of their guests. So it's a matter of doing the research there. So it's a number. From there, you can. You really need to get out from behind your computer. Is one way, and talk to people. Just having a conversation with a bartender at one of those hotels will open up and tip well. You can get a lot of information. And traditional Airbnb, rewriting your headlines and dog whistling for people business. I focus on business travelers. That's my favorite thing. That are on extended stay assignments. But as you try to attract those, you have to manage your calendar differently. You can't accept any more short-term stays. So that's where you have to have the faith part of kind of blocking out your calendar. And a lot of people are scared to do that. That's why I started off saying, is there an extended stay hotel in your city, especially Extended Stay America? Because they're really doubling down on focusing on 2-month stays. That's why they're in your market. Is they're focused on getting people who stay 1 to 2 months. That's what their CEO is saying. That's all we're calibrating ourselves on.
So now, for those that are probably listening to this and are exploring the concept of short-term rentals for the first time, when you said two things that might be a little challenging. Well, you said rewrite the headlines. Because they've never written a headline, so they don't know what you might be referring to. And then second, you said blocking out your calendar, and people are afraid of that. Now, I have an understanding of what you're saying and communicating, but for those, if you can expound on those two things, I think we may have lost a few people, but we want to bring everybody with us. Hello there, entrepreneur. This is Jay Massey, and what I want to say to you is that the number one mistake that I have ever made in business, number one, has been waiting too long to do the books, waiting too long to get the bookkeepers, the accountants, the CPAs, the CFOs involved, and I don't want you to make that same mistake. That mistake cost me over 6 figures, and now for a significant discount, you have the ability to get your books together using FreshBooks. So what I want you to do is I want you to go over to gofreshbooks.com/cashflowdiary. Again, that's gofreshbooks.com/cashflowdiary. FreshBooks is the easy to use software designed to help you, the small business owner, the freelancer, get organized and save time on invoicing, getting paid faster, keeping those books in order so that it becomes a bonus for you to do your taxes as opposed to a burden. Go over to gofreshbooks.com/cashflowdiary and get started today. And now let's get back to the rest of the story.
Okay. Yeah. Let's definitely bring everyone with us. So if you're working with Airbnb, which has the most internet presence of everything, they do about twice the transactions as the Marriott, which is the largest hotel chain in the world. So you cannot, that's the first place to start, is on Airbnb. And as you're putting together your listing, you're writing headlines and taking pictures, which is really, really important. You got to focus on those things. And your headline, you can write the copy or the headline to attract a certain person. Like if I was talking about this place is perfect for a eloquent business traveler, that'd be you, Jay. You would say this is this is for me, you know. Or my headline was, this place is great for a traveling group, you know, construction people who would get maybe 2 or 3 hotel rooms for their construction project might be attracted to your place.
Mm-hmm.
So you're writing your headline to resonate with that person. So that's really important as far as picking it. And then, of course, as you're writing your Airbnb listing, it gives you a chance to describe how long, what type of person you're looking for, how long you want them to stay. You can have a minimum stay requirement of 2 days or 2 months. So you just set that requirement, and Airbnb will only show your listing to someone looking for a 2-month or longer stay.
So when you, in that part is where you were referring to blocking out your calendar, correct?
Yes.
All right. So everybody who, just to make sure everyone's on the same page, and what's very true is, and I learned this a while ago when I used to sell yellow pages for the 3 of you listening that remember what that is. And is that you write the headline to attract the attention of the person who you're really looking for. So if
Right.
you're saying that you're open 24 hours and you're looking for someone who's looking in the middle of the night, then you make sure that open 24 hours is mentioned. Otherwise, they'll assume it's not them. And you're saying when we write, I don't know, extended stays welcome inside the title, that would speak to the person looking for it. Am I understanding you correctly?
Well, you are, but if we're talking specifically, I mean, this might be too nerdy for you.
Oh, no such thing. Go for it.
Of course, Airbnb will not show your listing to anyone who's not looking for 2 months longer if you specify that as your minimum. So you don't want to waste your headline space saying extended stay. You want to talk about, if you're looking for an extended stay person, you know that they want a washer and dryer. So that might be an important thing to talk about. Or if you extended stay, say an emergency room nurse who's staying 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
You may want to talk about writing your headline, if the competition's tight, that you have blackout curtains so that they can sleep. So they say, well, I can sleep during the day.
Mm-hmm.
Those types of things. Once Airbnb presents you to someone who's looking for the dates that you want to stay. So it's not like Craigslist, as you know. Not all listings are shown at the same time. Then you want to distance yourself. I always call vacancies the vacancy bear, Jay. And you want to be a couple inches in front of everyone else when that bear is chasing you. So that you do things to separate yourself by showing the right pictures and writing the headlines, and also knowing who your target is, or who the person that you really want to stay. It might be if you have a large house, it might be a construction crew putting in fiber optic lines, or if you're deep in the city, it could be even traveling crews who are updating lottery machines all over that region. And some of my smaller places are great for linemen who are coming in and servicing the power utility lines up here in Northern California because they have to, because of all the fires now.
Mm-hmm.
They're under a court order. So our utility company is under court orders to hire nearly everybody in the country to come here and service these utility lines. So there's a big demand for smaller places. So that's the thing. If you every house or every dwelling could be a boat, has the highest and best use, like we were talking about before, and it's just up to the housing entrepreneur to connect the dots. There's definitely a demand now, and it's growing as companies send their talent and their staff to different regions to service the client. There's a growing need for places for them to stay. Because Jay, have you ever stayed in a hotel for longer than a couple of weeks?
Yes.
Did you gouge your eyes out and pull your hair out? Is that how you lost your hair?
Hey, well, no, that was back in college. I went blonde and then I shaved it off. But what it came down to though is that it's a completely different experience, and it's not. You get over it really quickly. And
Yeah, that's it. So there's no competition essentially. The longer you go, like 2 months, people are looking for an alternative. If they got 2 months stay, they just can't fathom being in that hotel for longer and eating the same thing for the breakfast selection for for more than a week.
That continental breakfast suddenly wants you to leave the continent. Yes, I totally got it. Totally
Where does
got
English muffin come from?
it. Right? This looked like the English muffin I was here last week. Yeah,
Yeah.
totally understood. Now, but if I'm to hear for everyone listening, what you're really saying is that the type of the property is irrelevant as much as what's more relevant. And instead of saying, well, can I do it with a 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom? It's more about focus on who it is that you are looking to serve, and understand that person has certain unique needs. And sometimes, and once you've made that decision, then you can decide, what size property or location you might want.
That's exactly right. But you said it so much better than I did.
Well,
That's exactly right. Let me add to that a little bit because we want your listeners to take action. Is that if you roll in a upscale high net worth group, then you can serve those folks because you have the network already. But if you're a high school student that doesn't have those connections, don't try to serve that group. Stay in your lane, so to speak, so you'll be really successful. If you're a blue collar guy, then serve other. There's plenty of carpenters and iron workers and electricians that are coming to town for extended stay for construction projects. You'll have a better chance, and you'll relate to them better, and you'll furnish your place better and make the same spread, make the same net income.
Got it.
Doing that. So know where to score, but stay with people that you have an affinity to.
Now, I know if I don't ask this, I'm going to get reamed for why didn't you ask? Especially since you just said make the same net income. Everyone says, well, if I do that, I'm going to make less money. Explain what you mean, because you're using that word, and I'm like, I don't know if people are catching the distinction that you're making, but You're saying same net income. So explain what you mean by that.
Okay. You're such a good interviewer. That's a really smart question, because you can make your decisions based on gross income, and so many people who get into the space do that. And at the end of the day, when they look at their monthly, what's left in the bank, which is their net income, they oftentimes say, I travel around new Airbnb every couple times a month, different one. They often look back and say, you know what, I could have made more money if I was just a regular landlord. After all this in and out and all my time and everything, only the net income, making decisions based on how do I get my net income higher, you make different decisions. You might say, hey, I can lower my prices and get someone for a longer period of time, and that will give me actually what's left in the bank will be more than if I have to deal with all these replacing sheets and all the damage and all the the cost of doing business during turnovers that happen.
So you and again, I just want it stated plainly so that people can really hear that you're really saying that this opportunity then can exist for anyone, regardless of what an ordinance says, specifically when that ordinance is focused on stays that are less than 28 or less than 30 days, because we were talking about 30 days and more. That's what I'm hearing.
Yes, that's exactly what you're hearing. Those ordinances were for the kind of slow down and control those people competing against hotels for transients. and they call transients folks less than 30 days, but they're not intended for month-to-month rentals because those people who are writing these ordinances, they don't want to. They know affordable housing is, month-to-month rentals is the cornerstone of affordable housing. So those ordinances are not aimed for month-to-month rentals. So if you are doing short-term rentals, if you happen to fill your month-to-month rental by internet online travel agencies and other innovative ways, you're perfectly fine. You can make what I'm saying. Let me say it. Come out and say it. You can make more money doing monthly rentals. Just be very grateful that you have ordinances, because you can make more net income doing months and longer.
So when it comes down to it, for you, from your perspective, what do you see as the difference between those that are currently running a less than 30-day stay versus more than 30-day stay? What have been some of the distinct differences that you've noticed either in their marketing or how the business runs?
Well, I think, if you are on the beach, of course, you should be focusing on less than 30 days, I would say, because you got a lot of tourists. So the less than 30-day folks go after tourists and people coming for conventions and business travelers like myself, who are only there for a little while. Those who are focused on 30 days and longer, they're looking at some different things. Like they're looking at, do I have parking? Do I have laundry services? So they're marketing for those things. They're leading with those types of things, and they're also more. The things that they offer are different as well, because if you're for weekend stays, then the TVs and the cable, those things are important, for that type of person who's coming in just for a couple of days. Whereas not so much so for extended stays. There's a different, you're going after a business traveler for this longer term stays. That's typically who ends up showing up. And they're also, if that person who's a business traveler is having their employer pay for their stay, they act completely different than if they're paying out of their own pocket. They're more forgiving, they're more easygoing, and they're also more accountable. So they're less likely to damage your place, even though they're all, I think a lot of them are all great on their own, but they know that you know who their employer is.
And speaking of that, when it comes down to alternative ways of attracting your customer outside of any of the marketing or customer acquisition platforms like an Airbnb, what are some of the ways that you've implemented that you found to be successful?
Well, Facebook is great. Most people have their own private Facebook group, so you can join those and let people in those places know where you're offering. And one thing we use is, of course, we use our own website, just kind of mostly to show our properties as a catalog and send people links. If someone is acquired, we don't want to send them to Airbnb. We want to send them our own website and pictures from that. So the word, if you stick around for a year, then you should start developing a reputation, and the word should get out. You should be telling your friends, and then you're going to get a phone call. And at that time, it's important to have your own website to show people what you're getting. And well, let me walk you through this, Jay.
Yeah.
I have 8 categories.
Go for it.
Of the short-term rentals. There's the vacation rentals, and then there's military housing, and then there's student housing. Well, there's student housing could be grad students and undergraduates, 2 different distinctions of furnished rentals. And then you have your insurance housing, loss of use. You have insurance adjusters go out for extended period of time, as well as people loss of use and displaced. Okay. And then you have your corporate rentals for extended stays, and then you have what I call temp housing, Think of in-betweeners, someone who just sold their home and getting ready to buy a new one.
Yep.
Those type of places, and then you have international. Those different flavors. I think I named them all. I hope I named them all. But I missed medical. Now medical, you have 3 different flavors. You have stays for families who are staying because they have their loved ones have a prolonged hospital stay. You got the traveling medical professionals.
Yep.
And then you have the medical students. They all have different needs. The medical students, for example, they just want a bed and Wi-Fi. If you put anything else in there, you're kind of wasting your money. And also, they don't want to pay for it because they already have these huge student debts. They're all debt funded. So you strip down for them, and then of course, nurses have their own, or medical professionals have their own needs, and so do families who are staying for a prolonged period of time for the loved ones. They all have separate needs. So all those categories, you get to know. You figure out which one you want to dominate.
Mm-hmm.
And which, of course, if you don't have a military base around you, of course, you shouldn't do military housing. If you don't have a university around you, or if you choose not to work in that category, that's really important to know. So you're going to build a reputation in these categories, and that reputation is going to start to spin the flywheel. And then you're going to get more demand if you do an excellent job and provide a lot of value to that person. And then you'll find yourself being asked to expand, and your leads will start coming in. You'll start feeling stupid for not expanding, and then you expand.
Exactly.
And then you kind of grow your own funnel for that particular category. Like if you're in the military space and you earn the right to get their respect, then you're going to get a lot of leads right there.
So as you've continued to grow your business, and I know one of the questions that's going to come up, especially once you migrate and mature past the platforms, etc., typically one of the questions that we get is, how do we avoid having to either evict or granting tenancy to a person? And I'm curious to hear your answer or how you guys deal with that.
Well, that's one reason why I love just business travelers, because they have their dogs and their family somewhere else. They're just not going to stay.
Right.
So it's never been an issue at all. But if they did decide to stay at those elevated rents, I would have no problem with that. And if they're the margin is even nicer. And in fact, that has happened to me, where someone came in for 3 months and it's 2 years later.
Wow.
Yeah, it's 2 years later, still paying it, and they're arbitraging their location. They're living in Sacramento and working in the Bay Area.
Wow. See,
so
that's a sign.
No difference there.
That's a sign, but that's a whole nother day. So are you guys using any sort of separate agreement that you had to go and actually get drafted yourself to make those types of relationships happen?
Yeah, we are in some cases for those. I have my business partner is a real estate lawyer, so it makes it really easy.
Well, that's convenient.
That's convenient. But oftentimes, let's talk about places where there's ordinances.
Yep.
Here's a little. I'm gonna let this secret slip for folks. On your lease agreement, it says, so and so company is the owner, rents to so and so company, so and so person, and they call it a tenant. So in that lease agreement, it switches people from transients to tenant, and that can be the main purpose of a lease agreement. Is to switch it over there and have a different set of laws applied there. So, for example, in the hospitality industry, if we're running this hybrid, leases are not part of the hospitality industry, if you follow what I'm saying.
Oh, I follow. I'm letting it sit there because I know some other people said, wait, what? What did he say?
It's not a part. If you want to get into the hospitality industry, leases are not a part of that. These 12-page leases means you missed the point. That means That means you're in the landlord industry. Okay. So what's really important and the key to understand, especially if you're faced with ordinances, is that you make that person, you take that person from being a transient into a legal, verifiable tenant, and all those ordinances don't apply.
There's a lot there that you just said, and there could be another show and episode just on this one point. Now, before
right.
though, before we do that, I have to ask this because I'm kind of curious. Are you finding, or what are you finding as those special services or amenities that are available from a 30-day standpoint that you didn't do before? Are you offering additional cleaning? Are you providing them something at some additional fee, helping to increase your net income in some way, shape, or form?
I started off offering a menu for cleaning services and things like that, and I didn't find that popular. People just wanted to be left alone. If they had their washer and dryer, any place I had that didn't have a washer and dryer, I let it go because it capped how much I could charge, so I let those all go.
So you would say you found a washer and dryer to be like needed, is what it like paramount. Was that a washer and dryer in the unit, or a washer and dryer on the property?
On the property, it has to be on the property.
Got it. Okay, understood.
You do even better. So you kind of switch from service apartment to corporate housing to service apartment. There's like a distinction if the washer and dryer is inside the unit. So, but the things that I'm in the middle of a remodel of a mixed use building right now here in Sacramento, and we're pushing small stackables inside the units so that there's no cap on how much we'll be able to charge in the future.
I like it a lot. So, all said, is the wife happy now? She's like, okay, cool.
Yes, the wife, she was a RN, and she was able, thankfully for that first one, that same threeplex that she was squished into, found its way into a 1031 that actually retired her.
Awesome.
So the thing she complained about was the thing that gave her her freedom.
Ironic. I like it.
I love telling that story. I hope she never hears this.
Yeah, if she's anything like my wife, she's not gonna listen. So it's all good. It's all good.
So now that's how that happened. Yeah, she's happy now.
So for those that have listened this far and want to find out more about what you got going on, track you down, and understand more as it pertains to this 30-day extended stay thing, what's going to be the best way for them to find you?
Well, the best place to find me is on leadinglandlord.com. You can see about my coaching and training, my books, and also the experiments. I'm always doing some different type of experiment. You can read about it there. Like insurance, I'm just launching into an insurance. Well, how do people get into insurance housing? I'm starting that experiment right now.
Got it. Totally understood. Now, as we wind down, I've got a final question for you because I'm curious to hear your answer. Let's pretend that, someone, as it states, I know they were in one mental, emotional state when they started listening to us today, and now they're in another. And that could easily be, they're like, oh my gosh, that's it. I can do this. Suddenly you created, our conversation opened up for them a new possibility. And they're at that, precipice of decision. They're literally standing at the edge of the cliff going, do I, don't I jump? How can I'm ready.
Okay.
Now, like I know, as human beings, often when we get to that precipice, we have a voice that is a companion, and it often says, really? I don't know. I mean, you remember what happened last time you tried something like that? And the last time, you ended up with a whole bunch of debt and this and that. And for some people, they are related to that voice. So my question to you is as follows.
Yeah.
Let's pretend that this time it's going to be different. They're going to move forward. They're going to do exactly what you say, and they're going to do so in the next 24 to 48 hours.
Okay.
What would you suggest that they do?
Honestly, it sounds self-serving, but you need a coach to help you get your best out of you, especially to overcome your subconscious.
Yep.
You need someone who's actually has scars and knows what it's like to feel sick because they have a vacancy, and and can keep you from making those mistakes. So it really pays. All high performers get a coach, and I happen to have a coaching and training program specifically for extended stays, and I would be happy to coach any of your listeners through that point, and be that booster rocket that gets them to where it's easy to operate. After you run it in the extended stay world a little bit, you just need some time behind the wheel to get comfortable, and just like you would get a driving instructor.
Right.
It's great to have a coach who knows what he's doing in that space.
Excellent. And I love it. And again, as I said before, I say again, I definitely appreciate when entrepreneurs go out there and are willing to say, not only do I have something special, but I'm willing to share it with people. I'm willing to share it with you, and you guys can do it too. And that's exactly who you are showing up to be, and exactly why the world needs more people exactly like you. So I just want to be one of the first to say thanks for taking the time to share your knowledge, your wisdom, and your insight here with us today at the Cashflow Diary, sir.
Oh, I am so honored. I love your podcast, and I think I've arrived now. I've arrived. No one's going to be able to tell me nothing for the rest of the day.
Well, at least today. All right, ladies and gentlemen, you know what time it is. It's time for you to move at the speed of instruction. What does that mean? Well, that means do something. It doesn't mean sit still. It doesn't mean read the ordinance again. It doesn't mean think about can I, should I, would I. Yes is the answer. As I've said before, and I say again, those ordinances, they really are telling you here's where and here's how. And now, not just here's how, but here's a person who will show you how to go make it happen. So what does that mean? Leadinglandlord.com. That's what it means. And it means you need to take the action, because now you have even less of an excuse than you thought you had before, because there's people out there who are absolutely crushing it in your own backyard, and you're wondering, is there anything out there for you? Ladies and gentlemen, wealth is for everyone, and that means you. It's been fun talking to you guys today. I look forward to talking to you soon. Until next time.